I'm Sébastien Rosset, a principal engineer. I have been with UCS Engineering for about 8 years now. And I'm going to talk about what Starship is and also going into a bit of details on the architecture. And we'll have a demo. And then there will be a second session to talk in more details about security and monitoring. There's a lot of excitement among the customers that we have talked to and the analysts on Starship. And very often the first question that comes is, okay, that's great, but what about security? So we'll talk about security in more details. All right, so first, quickly, and Jeff talked about this at a high level, what are the customer benefits for Starship? One thing is we're taking all of the products that we have had since 2009, and we have rebuilt a brand new architecture based on microservices to provide a unified interface for UCS management and HyperFlex management. So that would include UCS servers that are attached to UCS Fabric interconnects, standalone servers, and HyperFlex servers. And the same configuration, the same policy can be used to manage all of these servers and do the monitoring. So this is a cloud-based solution. There is no software to install from the customer side. It's all managed by Cisco. And we're going to add new services over time, starting with out-of-the-box. Some services like the recommendation engine, which will provide insights for the customer that are tailored to their environment. For example, if a customer has a set of physical servers, they're running a hypervisor, they have firmware, they're running HyperFlex, we will provide recommendations on what is the best firmware and software version to run, the compatibility metrics, and so forth. This is going to be a subscription model. And because it is cloud-based, it also opens the possibility of making it much easier for support. If you compare to what we have today, if the customer has a problem, they would call TAG. There's a service request which is open. Then typically a WebEx is going to be scheduled. The customer has to take tech support. It gets uploaded. Then TAC looks at it, and maybe they will need additional information. That there's a lot of back and forth going on. So with this model, because the devices can be connected to the cloud, TAC will have the ability to obtain tech support files on demand, and we're also adding log streaming, of course, all with security in place, so that the customer is in control of what data can be shared and not shared. And all of this can happen transparently for the customer. All of the interfaces are programmatic. We're using standard tools like REST API. There's a Swagger spec. And we will be providing SDKs in the standard languages to be able to access all of the APIs. There's no, everything is provided as a REST API. And also what that means for the customer is if you have a set of, if you have brownfield, as long as you upgrade the UCS firmware to a version that supports Starship, by default, those servers will establish a connection to Starship, and in a moment I'll explain how that happens exactly. And for any new system that is being purchased, also it's enabled by default. So that applies to both brownfield and greenfield. But that doesn't mean that the customer has to drop all of the existing tools like UCS Manager or AMC Supervisor and the others. They can continue using them, and they can immediately leverage things like the enhanced TAC experience. And then at their own pace, they can go start doing more active management through Starship. So in a nutshell, you have this cloud offering. It provides data center management, and it is at world scale, global scale. So you can have servers that are deployed anywhere. It could be in a data center. It could be edge. as long as it's a UCS server or HyperFlex cluster that has the minimum version of UCS firmware that supports Starship, which was posted in July, then the customer will have the ability to manage all of these systems from a single place. So out of the box, there's a recommendation engine, and we are also adding real-time analytics, machine learning that we'll talk about in more details in the next session, as well as forecasting. Now, from the engineering side, we have completely changed the way we do software development. We are using a continuous delivery model with an agile process, and we keep building, testing, and deploying small components. It could be small feature, it can be big features. And ever since we have deployed the tech preview, we have already done multiple deployments of new features and bug fixes in the cloud with zero disruption to the API. So it's designed to have with high availability and scaling as a goal. So new services will be added over time. And of course, we will do a continuous monitoring. So just to have a concrete example, if you have multiple servers, they can be across the world. Right now, we have, for tech preview, we have Starship deployed in the US, but we're looking at deploying across multiple regions. And all of these systems can connect to the Starship portal. The customer can connect to the Starship portal and start using that interface. Just a quick summary of the equipment that is being managed by Starship out of the box at GA. So you have the HyperFlex platform, T-Series standalone servers, S-Series servers, and it can also be servers that are attached to the UCS Fabric Interconnect. They all have a software component that we call the device connector, which is shipped with a predefined URL, certificates, and all the security in place to be able to establish connections to the Starship cloud. So that doesn't mean, by shifting to Starship from the customer perspective, that doesn't mean that they will have to completely rethink the way they manage. This is just an example of the policy management that we do in Starship. And actually, it's very similar to what has been done in UCS. A lot of customers really like the concept of service profile that is available in UCS Manager. So that concept remains. But we're expanding that to support not just UCS Manager, but also standalone servers and HyperFlex with the same policy model.
Real quick question on that connector. What is that? Is that an actual appliance of some sort?
No, this actually I have the next slide is right there. So this is more of an architecture slide. So you have a UCS FIs with UCS servers. So there's actually a component that runs within the FI. So there's you don't have to install an additional appliance. You just need to have the minimum version of the firmware to support Starship. And then from now on, any new version will support Starship. It is the same on C-Series standalone. It's actually running on the BMC. It's a small piece of software. You don't need an additional appliance. And then same thing on HX. HX happens to run on UCS. There's two layers. There's the device connector that runs in the BMC or the FI, plus the device connector that runs in HyperFlex itself.
Once you enable it, then it phones home back upstream to the cloud?
Right. So you have it basically we want to make it as simple as possible. So it's an HTTPS connection that gets converted to a WebSocket, and it's just standard port 443, and all of the communication for monitoring and active management will happen over that WebSocket connection. There is some control, and there are multiple knobs to control whether you actually want to enable this or disable it. By default, it is enabled, but it's something that the customer can have control over. So now from the cloud, you have a series of microservices that are handling the inventory, recommendation engine, policy management, security model, RBAC, licensing, automation monitoring, and we'll keep adding more and more. And when this happens, the customer doesn't have to install anything new. It's just like one day you log in and, oh, there's a new service. Or 3 days ago, a customer indicated that they had a problem, and that goes into the feedback. We can push new software, and with continuous delivery, it gets fixed.
What about like a net new deployment? Is there zero touch provisioning back northbound to Starship?
So net new deployment, you mean like greenfield deployment?
Yeah.
So if you have, like for example, if you have the M5 platform, by default that will support Starship. If let's say you have an M4 platform, then depending on when you got the hardware, it may have the firmware that supports Starship, but if it has been in a factory floor for a long time, you may have the old firmware that doesn't support yet. But as soon as you upgrade to the latest version, you will be able to support Starship.
Yeah, I may have missed it, but I just mean like out of the box. Like, is there, like out of the box, is it enabled? Where you?
Oh, yes. It
is?
Yes, yeah. So it's an opt-out feature, but you're in control. You can disable it.
So your order equipment, get it on site, rack, stack, power, plug it in, you'd be able to see it?
Yeah, as long as you have an IP, a route, a default gateway.
Okay, so you need to put that on yourself. There's an ZTP or POAP protocol to bootstrap. Okay.
I mean, like for example, if you take a rack server, right? You have to physically cable it. You have to put power, and it needs to have an IP address.
Okay.
Because we don't have access. We don't have access yet to your environment. But as soon as you have an IP address, then it will connect to Starship, and that's all you need to do. Then from then on, you can start managing from the cloud. Now in the backend, we also have integration with other services like supply chain, licensing, entitlements. So we want to make it as simple as possible for the customer when they log in. If we can expose that information on what you are entitled to, whether your licenses, having a single sign-on, and also automated software download. What we're doing is that we are making it easy to configure firmware policies and then do an automated installation and upgrade for all of these platforms. So this is one more question.
I was going to ask a question, actually, just curious. Sort of, former life in the, integrator VAR space. Just curious, are there programs to enable like VARs to manage like the portals for their clients, things like that?
Right. Yeah, good question. We have talked a lot about this. And so from the architecture perspective, we have been thinking a lot about that, how to expose a portal for resellers, partners, or anybody who would be managing equipment on behalf of a customer. For example, simple things, enabling licensing, enabling smart call home. So that is something that we are thinking about. It's not there in the first release, but we are thinking about that.
I only ask because partners make a lot of PS money installing things right now, and
right.
This is the right archetype. I think the right model. I love it, but it's just a matter of I know some folks are going to be disappointed with maybe a diminishing amount of dollars for installation and configuration, things like that.
For installation, yes, but for managed outsourcing, there's an opportunity then for a partner to take on more of that outsourcing work as well to manage on behalf of a customer. And
also moving up the stack, right? Provide value-add services.
Yeah, cool.
So this is a bit more of a deep dive into the architecture. So again, we're using microservices, completely new software. We're leveraging a lot of open source software. And we are thinking about availability, scale. We need to scale to at least 1 million servers. Security, of course. What that means is we have multiple availability zones, and each zone will have a stack which is built on top of Linux with Docker, Kubernetes, and a laundry list of components actually that it looks like a NASCAR poster, but this is all the open source tools that we use in addition to the in-house software development.
And just curious, why show this?
Actually, so we want to be open about the architecture, and there has been interest about, hey, how you're building this. That I would like to use something like that as a reference architecture, because I'm also building my own application. Right. And so I go to developers conferences. Like, for example, if you look at Google, Facebook, they're very open about their architecture. I think we also want to be very open. That's a good way to establish trust and I will do the same for security. I want to be pretty open. So I'm not going to go in every single detail, but there's, for example, we use multiple databases, and the reason for this is because for each use case, for monitoring, for analytics, you have a better fit for MySQL and PWIC, which is for user management. And then Mongo is great for JSON documents. So the list goes on and on. And then for security, we use multiple components, but really all of the engineers have to work and always think about security, because that's really the primary concern. And from the DevOps perspective, again, so if you look at the previous slides, you have lots of services. And this is the way we operate that cloud. You have many teams. Each team may be responsible for a particular aspect of they may be responsible for one service. They will be able to work on that service without being too worried about other services. All of these, they are loosely coupled. And they can build, test, release, and operate independently.
Okay. Hello, my name is Jeff Foster. I'm a senior product manager with Cisco Systems, and I want to share with you a tech preview that we have available today for Project Starship. So earlier this year, in July, we started shipping our standalone C-Series, UCS managed, and HyperFlex solutions with an embedded device connector. That device connector registers and calls home to this service. What you're seeing here is a dashboard with information specific to our TME accounts. So this is a lab account that is running live in the tech preview portal, the same portal that if you had systems, you could register with your account. Our engineering team is using this portal to manage their UCS, their standalone C-Series and HyperFlex systems from the same interface. So this is the first interface that Cisco's developed to bring together all of these systems. This is new innovation, new functionality that our customers have started to adopt to see all of their Cisco infrastructure in one interface. You can see here we've got a health snapshot, inventory snapshot, all available on a single dashboard screen. We also have a number of menus specific to each of the elements that we can manage. First off, the server page. We have a tabular view of all of the servers under management with a key snapshot of health as well as the specifications for each server. We have information about our HyperFlex clusters and our Fabric interconnects. In addition, on the Fabric interconnects page, one thing I want to call out is from this interface, we have the ability to launch UCS Manager. So I'll hit the button here. We're actually tunneling the API through to the UCS managed device. So we don't need local network access. I can be anywhere in the world, even without local network access to the UCSM UCSM running on the Fabric interconnects. I can access the interface. I can drill down to get any second level information or perform operations. So you can see here as UCSM in this domain loads, I can now perform actions as if I was launching the interface natively. So if I come back to the interface, I just want to highlight a few other items here. Alarms. We have access to all of the alarms across all of the infrastructure being managed. I can filter by severity. I have the ability to search. So this is a global search. We can search for systems, faults, tags, or metadata that we associate. So I know we've got some systems here in San Jose, building 18, where we are. I can see the alarms and the infrastructure associated with building 18. We have settings where you can configure additional users. Those users can be read-only users or admins. And finally, we've gone to more of a guided documentation style. So if I wanted to learn how to register a device, add a new user, I can click on these and it will guide me through the process of those actions. So again, a tech preview that's available today for Project Starship, and we'll continue to add new functionality through our continuous integration, continuous delivery feature.
So is Starship more or less visibility only today? And you would launch UCS Manager for configuration?
Correct. So in the tech preview, Starship is a read-only interface with the ability to tunnel. As we evolve, you'll see additional read-write or configuration options exposed.